We'll start in 1 minute. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining this TG-Data Interactive Atlas Regional Webinar. This is the first of a series of webinars. This one focuses on Europe, and this has been organized by the IPCC Task Group on Data, Support for Climate Change Assessment, is TG-Data in brief. And the presenters of this webinar will be myself, José Manuel Gutiérrez from the Spanish National Research Council, Richard Jones from the Met Office, together with Emily Parinje, also from Met Office, Bart van der Haart from Deltares, Irina Gorodeskaya from the University of Aveiro, and Mayalen Iturbide also from the Institute of Physics of Cantabria, it's CSIC. So this event is supported by the IPCC Data Distribution Center, the Spanish node, and there would be some contributing authors of the Atlas team members supporting the different breakout groups. They are listed on the bottom. So the structure of the webinar is total 1 hour. The first part would be, besides the introductory session, which is this happening now, we will have a presentation given by its 3 parts: TG-Data, the IPCC Data Distribution Centers, and also the Technical Support Unit. And they will all talk about different aspects, different angles of data curation, data terms of use, and the data access and availability, which are quite innovative in this assessment report because they focus on FAIR principles. So this would be 15 minutes, and we'll have right after Q&A's 10 minutes session, and we'll use Slido to ask and vote questions. You will, in the chat, Jesus Fernandez, who is organizing that, will paste the information. So you can just enter in Slido and make your questions or vote those already there. So we can have some most popular questions to be answered in this 10-minute slot. So this would be in this main room, and then after that we will split in multilingual breakout groups to have this interactive activity on the use of the interactive atlas. This will be led by different IPCC regional authors. So the idea is that this will last 20 to 25 minutes, and we'll have some Q's and A's at the end, or depending on the size of the groups on the fly. This will be organized when we enter in the breakout groups in half an hour. So the breakout groups, I will explain it later in detail, but we have 5 different breakout groups, and 2 are in English, 2 are in Spanish, 1 in French, according to the preferences of the registrants. And we will divide according to the previous experience in using the interactive atlas. So some of you have indicated that you have never used the interactive atlas, so this is no previous use. So those in English will stay in the main room, And this main room will be streamed. So when we divide in breakout groups, the streaming will stay with the main room. And then the others, according to the experience and the language preference, will split in the other breakout groups. I will tell you later how to do that. So we will go in the interest of time, because we want to make this event short, 1 hour, so it is not very time consuming for you. So we'll go right to the presentation of the TG-Data and DDC and TSU presentation. So I will stop sharing and leave the floor for the presentation. So Rebecca, please.
Hi, my name is David Huard. I co-chair with Sebastian Vicuña the IPCC task group on data support for climate change assessment, whose objective is to improve access to IPCC data, both for IPCC authors and also scientists that rely on the IPCC reports. This presentation is meant to give an overview of the work done in AR6 to make IPCC data accessible and reusable. The work heavily relies on the IPCC Data Distribution Center, the DDC, and technical support units from the different working groups, the TSUs. I'll be introducing TG-Data briefly, and then let Martina Stockhause present the DDC, and Anna Pirani present the work done by Working Group 1 TSU. So the task group on data support for climate change assessment was created in 2019 and is the successor to TGCA. TGCA was itself created in 1997 to provide regional climate change information with a focus on capacity building. TGCA published numerous guidelines on socioeconomic scenarios, greenhouse gas scenarios, sea level scenarios, and statistical downscaling. Now, TG-Data is focused less on capacity building and more on data access and reusability. Our mandate is to provide guidance to the IPCC Data Distribution Center, to provide curation, transparency, and traceability of data and scenarios. Also to facilitate the access of data for IPCC authors, and facilitate the availability and use of climate change-related data resulting from the activities of the IPCC in accordance with the mandate of the IPCC. And the mandate of the IPCC is to assess the state of the scientific literature on all aspects of climate change, its impacts, and society's options for responding to it. And so scientists from hundreds of independent institutions around the world volunteer their time and energy to review the scientific literature, judge the strength of the evidence, and synthesize it into key messages. The objective is for the report to be as rigorous as possible with an open review process, collecting comments from expert reviewers around the world. And for example, in AR6, over 180,000 comments were collected for the first and second drafts of the 3 working groups, and each and every one of these comments was given a response. As a consequence of this very thorough review process, the reports are authoritative and widely cited. However, it has not always been easy to access the data underlying the report to, for example, reproduce IPCC figures and tables. So one of the key objectives for TG-Data has been to make AR6 data findable, accessible, and reusable. What this means in practice is archiving a snapshot of the key data sets presented in the report, but also publishing the data underlying key graphics, as well as the code used to create those. This is useful to scientists who want to build upon work done by AR6 authors, but also to find and fix any error making its way into the report. Our main objective for the 6th cycle is to publish and archive the data underlying figures and tables found in the summary for policymakers for all 3 working groups, as well as for the synthesis report. The DDC is also working to preserve a snapshot of the core CMIP6 and CORDEX data used by IPCC authors, as well as other key biophysical and socioeconomic data sets. Archiving and publishing those data sets requires an enormous amount of work and coordination, distributed among AR6 authors, technical support staff, and data distribution centers. And now I'll let Martina present the DDC and its data curation activities.
My name is Martina Stockhause from the German Climate Computing Center, and I will introduce the IPCC Data Distribution Center. The Data Distribution Center is overseen by TG-Data, which was also already introduced by David, but it also is represented in TG-Data as ex officio members. And the TSUs also send ex officio members to the task group TG-Data. In the sixth assessment report, the DDC partners are 5 at the moment with different roles and responsibilities. So Metadata Works and the Center for Environmental Data Analysis in the UK are responsible mainly for final data archival. The German Climate Computing Center and the Center for International Earth Science Information Network in the US are responsible for input data archival. And the fifth partner, the Spanish Research Council, is responsible or hosting the interactive atlas of Working Group 1. The DDC was established in 1997 in Germany and the UK. The main objectives of the DDC are described in a DDC guidance document from 2018, and they are to support the IPCC assessment report and the DDC users in relation to data questions. The DDC partners operate based on a memorandum of understanding. The DDC, as any other repository, are guided by best practices in data management and data long-term preservation. And I'd like to name the 2 most important here: the FADE data principles, findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable data, and the trust principles describing the effort of research data repositories. Trust stands for traceability, responsibility, user focus, sustainability, and technology. The World Data System is a cooperation partner of the DDC, and the established DDC partners are regular members of the WDS. These guiding principles or best practices went into the formulation of the IPCC AR6 FAIR guidelines, which I will briefly introduce now. The FAIR guidelines aim at enhancing the transparency of IPCC's reports and other outputs. And they do that in 3 aspects. First, to enhance the traceability of key statements, and that is focusing on the figure creation process, which is documented in the supplementary materials, starting with input data, usage information, information on scripts which were applied to the data to create the final data, which are displayed in figures. The second enhancement for the traceability are references from the report to the data and in the other direction. The second aspect is credit. Credit has 2 sides. The first is that you give credit to those who provided input data sets, and that is done by the authors in the report. And the second is that the authors can receive credit for their final data sets because the final data sets get DOIs assigned to them. The last aspect is the long-term preservation, which is the main responsibility of the DDCs. So the input data sets which have no home in a trustworthy repository are curated and archived in the DDC. The same is true for the final data. Scripts are currently archived in Zenodo. The whole archival process is a collaboration between the working group TSUs and the DDCs. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Anna, who will introduce the work and the responsibilities of the technical support units.
Hello, I'm Anna Pirani, the head of the Working Group 1 Technical Support Unit. And following on from Martina's talk, I'll be describing the role of the TSU and aspects related to data in the reports. So the TSU is the team that supports the author's work in undertaking the assessments. We are overseen by the Working Group Bureau, and we're advised by TG-Data on data aspects. So the report authors, as part of their undertaking, they produce figures to illustrate the assessments and to give you an idea of the scale of this effort. There are about 650 figures as part of the AR6 Working Group 1 report. So the TSU provides a range of support from guidance and training, figure management. We work with authors to develop full data and script documentation. We have a Working Group 1 GitHub repository where we assemble scripts, and we can work with the authors to publish the code using Zenodo. And we also work with the IPCC Secretariat when there are queries on reusing, reproducing figures. So Martina has described the role of the DDC. What I want to emphasize is how important this connection between the TSU and the DDC is, and working alongside the data managers has been key to implementing FAIR principles and supporting the authors in this process. So in terms of access to data of the IPCC, first of all, to remind everyone that the IPCC does not produce data or research as such, but it reproduces data in figures, or it post-processes data as part of the assessments. So the Working Group 1 report has produced a very novel component. It's the interactive atlas. And this is there for visualizing, exploring, and accessing the
We seem to have lost the video.
Rebecca, we lost the video.
Okay, so the video ended suddenly, but it was like the final part. This is pre-recorded because it's the same video that will be played in other regional webinars. As I mentioned, this is just the first, and it's a bit of a test. We are testing all the logistics, the breakout groups, and the structure. So please be patient if things don't go smooth. Jesus has been screening the comments, the questions. So I don't know, first of all, if Anna Pirani, because I cannot see all the attendance, Anna Pirani is here with us, and Martina. I see Martina and Anna. So please, can you switch off your camera? And so we can see you. Thank you for joining, by the way. I see Anna, and I see Martina. So thank you for joining, and thank you for preparing this material, which is key for the breakout groups, the interaction with the interactive atlas, because this is the material underpinning all the analysis and all the information included in the interactive atlas. So it is really relevant. I don't know if Anna, the video stopped early, and you want to add anything regarding some of the topics which were not covered?
Yeah, I was trying to look for my slides, but I can't find them quickly enough. Essentially, what the video says is it explains how FAIR data principles are implemented in the report, how this has been crucial for being able to implement an interactive tool, a data-driven tool like the Interactive Atlas in an IPCC context. And I just explained briefly that this has been applied as a priority also for the SPM figures. I show where you find the SPM figure data. It's also been implemented into the chapters and technical summary. Also intermediate data sets, which are post-processed data sets as part of the assessment. So this is all the documentation, the access to the data, and in many cases, we're also able to provide scripts. I also made a point that we highly encourage this practice for developing derivative products, which are data-driven products developed in collaboration with external parties or just by external parties themselves. I showed an example, which is a sea level projection visualization tool we developed with NASA. And then I just went through data licensing, For IPCC produced data, we recommend CC-BY licensing, so a very sort of open access approach. And then I introduced the IPCC copyright, and this is to use the printed material essentially from the IPCC. So there's just these dimensions that when you reuse IPCC material, whether it's the data or the report itself, just to give some information on that. I think that was it.
Mm-hmm. I see Sebastian has also joined. Sebastian, if you switch off your video, that would be fantastic, so we can see you. Sebastian is co-chair of the TG-Data. Anna Pirani is the director of the Technical Support Unit, Working Group 1, and Martina Stockhause is, again, one of the responsible persons for the DDCs, for the Data Distribution Centers, the German one. So thank you, Sebastian, for joining also. I don't know if you want to comment briefly on just as TG-Data representative, or just to say welcome everybody. I don't know, and we can move quick to the questions Q&A.
Yeah, I just want to welcome everybody. Jose Manuel, I'm on the bike, as you can see. I'm going to the office, so I can give you an extended version of an introductory. So thank you, everybody, and welcome to this webinar.
It is good to see you riding office, so it's a good practice. Okay, so maybe then, Jesus, if you have compiled some relevant questions from the audience. We are now 120 participants. Maybe you can introduce them to Martina, Anna, and myself, and other lead authors.
Let me, I think there is just one for the moment. Let me do it. I think I can show. Oh, there are two.
We can see just part of now.
Can you see?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so the first one is can the data underlying the figures in the IPCC Working Group 2 be made available for reproduction or including in interactive products? I think this is, I don't know if you want to answer, Anna, plans for Working Group 2 data and figure archiving.
Yeah, as far as I understand, they also prioritize the SPM figures, first of all, but I would imagine that documenting and providing access to the data in the atlas would be of a lot of value. So I can't speak for them, but I would encourage that they do undertake this work for their atlas. So I'll pass on that there is this interest expressed here.
And the second question is about use of data and models. I think this could be addressed in the breakout groups. Would be good that you raise this question there, so we can look at this when using data. So maybe it would be good if you make a remark again, Anna, on the terms of use of the data for the products, the printed products, and from the DDC, from the data which is available in the data distribution center web and the different centers, so people is aware of how to use the data, how open it is.
Okay. Yeah, so the input data that is archived at the DDC is archived according to the licensing that goes with those data sets. So maybe Martina can add to this, but there are some conditions. For example, for CMIP6, it's very open, but you do need to register. There are non-commercial use constraints, things like that. For the data that's produced by the IPCC, so the plotted data, what we call output data, we are encouraging, it's not a law, but we're encouraging CC-BY. So it's essentially, unless I'm not a licensing specialist, but it's open access. It's I understand this license has very limited restraints. What we do require for the IPCC, and this is also part of the copyright, is a full citation of the origin of the data. So we're publishing the data sets with a DOI. So when the data is finally published in the DDC catalog, you will find the documentation that goes with it, the descriptive information, also the citation information. So it's just important to cite the work. And the same goes for the code. So we're in the process now of archiving the code developed by different chapters. We have a working group 1 GitHub repository, which is publicly accessible. Not all repositories have been published yet. It's sort of work in progress, and we'll be communicating once we do have material available. And there again, there will be information on in particular, the citation. So what's important is to show where the material comes from, and the policy we're implementing, we're recommending, is very open access, open data, and we encourage reuse to develop for research purposes or for communication purposes and so on. The main importance is the citation. And in terms of the printed material, so for example, when you take, say, an SPM figure, the copyright is a little stricter in that the adaptation of these figures, if it is the SPM figure that's cited, not a derivative product, it's much more strict. So the important thing there is not to distort the message that's been developed by the IPCC. And so when you follow up on the copyright of the IPCC, you can see that there is a possibility to discuss this with the Secretariat. And one thing I say in my video is that the TSU is generally involved in those discussions. So if you have any doubts, please feel free to contact us. That's it, reproducing IPCC product material from the reports. The data is treated differently. So I try and emphasize this difference. We are implementing FAIR principles on the data and the code to encourage further work and open science. Does that help, Jose?
Yeah.
Maybe I can have a quick addition to what Anna already said. One comment is on input data licenses. So we depend on the licenses which were assigned by the data producers. So there might be different licenses apart from the CC BY. And the second is a short announcement. So at the DDC web pages, we are setting up a page on AR6 data. So give an overview of the data which is available for the AR6 and the different parts of the AR6. So that's close to be published. So not quite ready, but close to.
Jose, can I come in? I mean, I don't want to pass the question over to you, but I think the Atlas has a very special, special example in that you've implemented this comprehensively. And perhaps you could say something there as well regarding the Atlas.
Yeah, I'm just copying in the chat the link to the IPCC DDC, so you can find more information along the lines just commented by Martina there. So the link is in the chat. It's ipcc/data.org. So in the Atlas, we will enter in the breakout group soon. But the idea is that in the Atlas we have both figures which you can download as such as bitmaps, as in PNG format, and those are IPCC copyright, because this is an official IPCC product. So the idea is that you don't distort the message of the figure. So you have to use the figure as such, and the copyright is included there in the figure. But you can also download the data underlying the figure. This for the maps, as we can see later in the breakout groups. And that data is under the DDC and the Data Distribution Center license, and this is a Creative Commons BY. So basically, you can use the data for your own purposes and make derivative products as you wish, as long as you acknowledge the source. So, and that's the difference. So you can do whatever you want with the data, prepare your own figures, your own material, but that won't have the IPCC stamp. That would be your view based on data, not IPCC view. IPCC view is the figures that are included in the report and the figures that you can export from the atlas. This is just data-driven, one line of evidence. So that's important, and that is relevant context information for the breakout groups. So I think we can just move forward to the breakout groups for the second part. So let me I lost the slides. Yeah. So we enter in the second part. So now Rebecca will activate the breakout groups. So you will see at the bottom of your screen an option, which is this is in Spanish, but the small groups or breakout groups, depending on your language. So if you click there, you will see a number of groups, and we have prepared 5 different groups. The English group for users with no previous experience with the Interactive Atlas. In the registration, we ask you if you have previously used the Interactive Atlas, but some use, high use, whatever. So if you have no previous experience with the Interactive Atlas, you stay in this room for English. So you don't enter any of the breakout groups. If you have some previous experience with the Interactive Atlas, you have played 15 minutes or so, then you go to the English some use breakout group. You will go with Bart. In Spanish, we have 2 groups. The Spanish no previous use, where you will go with Mayalen, and Spanish with some previous use. This is a Spanish some use. You will go with me. And we have a single French group because the number of attendants in French were more limited. That will be hosted by Emily and Irina. Okay, so the idea is that we'll give you now a couple of minutes to find your way. And those who have problems, please send something, put your name in the chat and say which box would you like to go. So we can just, if you have problems, do it for you. So we'll wait.
Jose.
Yes.
In the chat, they are commenting about the question that remained, and maybe it's better to clarify it here instead of in every of the breakout groups, because it's about how to use a single model and so on. So maybe this uncertainty question is better addressed in plenary now.
But people are moving now, so this I think this is the question that I ask the attendant to raise again in the breakout group. So okay. Let me check who is moving where. So we have now 85 still here in the main room. So Emily, you can go to your room, and Anna, Richard, and all others, please.
Jose, I was
Thank
just
you.
In the chat. I have to leave. I have an airplane to catch. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. So thank you for joining, and see you.
Congratulations on the first outreach. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Let's see. David Prieto, Spanish no use. Rebecca, can you check the chat and move the people to the rooms that they select? Can you confirm, please?
Yeah. I'm see.
It's just one. David Prieto wants to go to the Spanish no use.
The Spanish, yeah, okay.
And I think all others are staying with you, Richard.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right.
So how many? So we have 59 in the English no use. So it's more or less half of the attendance, which is what we guessed. So if you want to make this group a bit smaller, some of you could move to because there won't be any major difference between the no use and some use groups. This is just to divide people or more or less in half and half. So it's a simple way to split. But if
I think people, Jose, I think people are still moving because the unassigned group is now down to 49. So I think people are still moving.
Okay. So I will move to my group, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Richard. Thank you all for coming, and see you next time, because we are not coming back to the plenary. Let me find my way.
So just a response to Ahmed in the chat. The first group, English no use, is to stay here. Okay, so if you want to join the group in English who haven't used the interactive atlas, then please stay here. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. Just to introduce myself, I'm Richard Jones. I'm one of the other coordinating lead authors of the Atlas, along with Jose. And I'm going to take you through sort of a bit of a demonstration of the interactive atlas, elements of the interactive atlas as it can be applied to Europe. And so I'll start off by sharing my screen. Give me a second whilst I bring that up. So can you please let me know if you are able to see the screen? Can somebody open their mic and confirm they can see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so you should be looking at a map of the world with a scatter plot at the bottom. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so just let me just go back to the home page for the interactive atlas. So starting at the very beginning. So this is what, when you go to the interactive atlas link, and you can see the web address at the top, interactive-atlas.ipcc.ch. So that's the web link for the interactive atlas. This is the landing page. And what you see here are three options, main options towards the bottom. So in the center is regional synthesis. So this is what we will explore first. Then there's another option, or in fact, there are two sub options here of regional information. And then there is the documentation that provides a lot of the background about the interactive atlas. There are some other links here as well. We have a user survey. So when you have had when you have tested out the interactive atlas, if you had a look through yourself, we will be very keen for you to provide us some feedback in the user survey. Should you find any problems with it, then there is the ability to report those. There's an errata and problem reporting page. The information about the license, you've heard about licenses and correct citations of the atlas. So that information is provided, and also there's if you need to get in contact with the team who maintain the atlas with any specific questions or comments, then you can get in touch with them. So that's basically Jose and Mayelen and the team at Cantabria who are responsible for all the technical details of the atlas. So that's just a brief introduction. I'll just go back and find my my window. I just wanted to check the idea. If you have any questions as we go through, the idea is, can you add those questions into the Slido that was advertised in the main? Well, we are still in the main session, but was advertised earlier. Jesus, do you want to post in the information about the Slido again? Thank you very much. Those haven't seen it. So if you do have any questions, please go to that link and then post your question in there in the Slido link, or if there's a question that you already see there that you would specifically like answering, then you can vote for that, and the most popular ones will get answered towards the end of my brief run through. So as I said, we'll start off by exploring what is called the regional synthesis component of the atlas. So I'll just click into that page there, and I'll start actually with the map version of this. So what you're seeing here is a map of the world, and you will see superimposed on that, in this case, what we're looking at is what is expected in the future in terms of average temperature. So as we all know, of course, the average temperature is expected to increase in the future, and we have very high confidence in this. So what you're seeing here is a map of the world split up into a series of different reference regions, which were defined specifically for summarizing information in the report. And so this is showing our confidence that this particular variable is going to increase in the future. So this is this is information which is summarized in the technical summary, in the summary for policymakers of the report, and this is a visual representation of that. And you will see on the left-hand side that there is a long list of different variables here, and the variables that we're looking at, these are a set of climate system conditions which we in the report have called climatic impact drivers, and we use that term because these were identified through an interaction with Working Group 2 as a set of variables which are very relevant for assessing impacts and risks associated with climate change. So that they are grouped under different headings. The first is heat and cold, then you have wet and dry, wind, snow and ice, coastal and other. And what this map here is showing is the confidence that we have in how these climatic impact drivers will change in the future. And if you go to one of the other variables, so in this case, I'm going to choose fire weather. And what you're seeing here is that in many regions of the world, we're expecting fire weather to increase in the future. And the coloring in these regions gives you an idea of the confidence in that. So for example, specifically for the Mediterranean region, which is this block, this sort of dark purple block at the bottom, that's indicating in the Mediterranean region we have high confidence that fire weather is going to continue to increase in the future. So this is one aspect of the regional synthesis. Another way that you can look at this information that we are summarizing it here is under the regions tab. So I'm just moving now to the regions tab, and what this is doing is it's summarizing all of the changes that are expected in the future, plus information about how these variables have changed in the past for any particular region. So as we've just been looking at the Mediterranean, what I'll do is I'll select the Mediterranean here. And so this gives you a list of all of the of these climatic impact drivers that are expected to change, either to increase or to decrease in the future. And as I said, on the right-hand side, we now have information about how these variables have changed in the past, and also whether we can attribute the past changes to human influence. So that's one example for the Mediterranean, and you'll see, for example, under the wet and dry, one of the entries here is that fire weather climatic impact driver we've just looked at, and this has given us high confidence of increase. Another example is heavy precipitation and pluvial flood. That's given us a medium confidence of increase. For example, in the case of some of the cryosphere variables, you'll see snow and glaciers and ice sheets, and permafrost and lake and river ice are all high confidence of the decrease in the future. We can select a different region, and this is now Northern Europe, or we can select another region, say Eastern Europe, and you will see another important feature message that's coming out of the report, which is that different regions will have different sets of climatic impact drivers that are changing. But as you can see also from the length of this list, the list for the different European regions, is that you will see that there are a large number of these climatic impact drivers which are going to be changing in the future. So this is a very important message of the report, and this is demonstrated here. The third of the options in the regional synthesis is the ability to have a look. And now we're going back to essentially what is a global map. But in this case here, the regions are not shown as full the geographic regions, but they are represented as hexagons. And what this allows us to do now is to see for a particular set of climatic impact drivers, how that set is changing in different regions of the world. So if we could, for example, because these are hexagons, you can choose up to 6 of these here. So for example, we can choose extreme heat, and then we can choose heavy precipitation and flood, and then we can choose agricultural and ecological drought, fire weather, which we've chosen before, and then maybe some of the cryosphere variables like lake and river ice, and maybe some of the coastal variables such as coastal flood. And what this gives you is it gives you a picture of, again, which of these variables is expected to change in the future, either increases or decreases, how confident we are in those changes, but also some information about how they have changed in the past. So this is, so if you are interested in the potential of having multiple risks as a result of multiple different hazards changing in a particular region, and again, let's have a look at the Mediterranean. So this is the Mediterranean here I'm sort of highlighting, and that's showing that all 6 of these variables are expected to change in the future mostly with high confidence, so with medium confidence, one with medium confidence. And so if you wanted to look at the Mediterranean and see how multiple hazards are changing at the same time, this is a way of being able to visualize that information. So I think what I will do actually is I'll just pause here before I go on to the regional information component, just to see whether there are any questions that have come up at this stage. So Jesus, is there any questions appeared? Sorry, I can't see the results of the Slido at the same time as looking at this.
There are a couple of them I can share.
Okay, if you could.
Whoops, there we go. Can you see it?
Okay, yes, I can see those, yeah.
Well, the first one is from the plenary, but I think it's important to answer it as well.
Yeah, so
but maybe it's more relevant for the next part of the of the atlas?
Yes, I was going to. Yes,
model.
I was going to. I think so. I think so. We'll save that question because it's more specifically about the models rather than the synthesis information. So thanks, we'll do that. But for the second question that's been asked, the arrows in the hexagon. So let's just. What you will see here is that the key for the hexagon figure at the bottom shows.
Sorry, Richard. Share again the screen because I share mine and I.
Oh, sorry. Of course, yes, yes. I've yeah. Thanks, Jesus. Yeah, sorry. Okay. Let me go back. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. So yes. Sorry about that. The key at the bottom of the figure shows a series of these the triangles with arrows in. So what the arrows are showing, if the arrow is black, then what that is showing is that we have an observed trend in this climatic impact driver in that region. And if the arrow is either red or blue, then that says that in addition to having an observed trend, we also have information about the attribution of that trend to human influence. So that's the meaning of the arrows. So it gives this additional information. We're not just looking at the future here, we're also providing, where it's available, information about what has happened in the past, which obviously increases our confidence in the information if we have that past trend information. Okay, so in that case,
there's another question about the attribution, Richard, before passing to the next one. Maybe.
Yep, sure. Okay. So is it easy?
It's just the meaning of the with or without attribution.
Okay. Yeah. So what we're talking about here with attribution. So this is where studies have been done that have looked at the trend that has been observed, and then looked at different factors that might have caused that trend. So whether from a climate perspective, whether that trend has been caused by maybe just natural variability of the climate system, or whether it is a result of one or more forcing factors. So increases in greenhouse gases, increases of aerosols in the atmosphere, land use change, different factors. So we look at whether which of the factors has caused that change. And so that's what an attribution study is. It's looking at what is the driver of that change. The specific aspect of attribution that we are focusing on here is whether that change can be attributed to human influence. So whether it's a result of increases in greenhouse gases or increases in aerosols or some other factor that might have caused that change. So that's
okay. Maybe you can share the screen now to show where this is shown in the atlas itself.
Okay. So now what I'll do is I'll go back to the home screen, and then I will move to the regional information component. And so this is the sort of the landing page for the regional information component. And what you have here is, again, a map of the world. And what we're looking at in this particular case is we're looking at the temperature, projected change in temperature, and the information about exactly what projection we're looking at is given in the text at the bottom of the window. And this is showing that you're looking at a change which is projected by the CMIP6 set of models. So this is the latest set of global climate models that have been the sort of the coordinated experiment of those, which the data have been collected, and we have are now displaying it here in the interactive atlas, and we're looking at the regional pattern of changes at the global warming level of 2 degrees So this is obviously is relevant to a 19th century baseline, 1850 to 1900. And this is looking at the annual mean change, and you'll see that this is an average over 34 models. So this is the global picture, and if you wanted to see what that looked like from a regional perspective, then you can focus on a particular region. So let's choose Eastern Europe. So my cursor is now hovering over Eastern Europe, and if I click the mouse over there, then what you then get is you get the time series of all of the models, and then the average of the model, which is shown in bold in there. And so that's from the recent past. So this is looking from 1950 up to the end of this century, and how the temperature over that region has evolved in the models in their in their control periods, in the baseline periods from 1950 up to present day, and then how that change is evolving into the future. Now this is showing that just for temperature. Again, as with in the regional synthesis, we have a very large number of variables that we can choose here. So from both the atmosphere and the ocean, and also some other variables such as ozone and aerosols at the surface, and so this allows you to choose a wide range of variables. So if you're interested, for example, in sort of heavy precipitation, then you can choose. You can go to this list, and then you can choose maximum 1 day precipitation. So this is an example of something which would potentially cause, pluvial flooding or extreme precipitation events. And again, we're still focused on this Eastern European region. And then what you see here, again, in the time series at the bottom, is how that evolves over that period. And now you're seeing on the map, you're actually seeing some hatching on the map, and the hatching is over areas where the signal, the change that we're seeing from these models is less robust. So where you just see the plain color, that you have high model agreement in these changes, and where you see the hatching, then you have lower model agreement in the change. So that's an example for another variable. You'll see at the bottom that there are a series of different options that you can choose. So we're just looking at the time series option at the moment. What you can do is you can provide information in tabular form. So you can look at the way that this variable is expected to change under different warming levels. So the median change, and then the sort of range of change around that median. You can also have a different way of representing that. So you can look at the change in each of the models individually. So this is a time series, but each row in that time series is an individual model, and see how this variable is changing over that period of 1950 up to 2100. And now you can actually identify which each of the models are in this, that is used in this ensemble. So that's all looking at projections, but we also have, and that's just one of the data sets we have in terms of looking into the future. So this is the CMIP6 data set. We also have the CMIP5, but specifically for Europe, we have the regional models that were run for Europe. So the what are called the Euro Cordex models. And so here you're then looking at just a set of models that will run over this European region. And again, you can select a particular region. So now maybe if we go to say consecutive dry days as another measure of precipitation, and then maybe choose the Mediterranean region, and then that will give you how this particular variable has evolved over this period. And again, you can look at summary information about that. So this is showing that consecutive dry days are expected to increase in the future. This here is just as an annual mean, but you can also choose different seasons for some of the variables. So if we go back to, for example, mean precipitation, and we look at that, and then you can look at that either as an annual mean, or you can look at it maybe across the summer, or you can look at it a particular season of interest. So if we then look at this over the summer, so this is mean precipitation over the summer, then again focusing on the Mediterranean, these regional models are projecting that this will decrease, and with the decrease becoming larger as you go to higher warming levels. So that's a very, very brief run through of some of the functions of the regional information component of the Interactive Atlas. And I think we've almost used up the time that we had allocated for this session. So I'll stop there, and I'll go back to Jesus for any questions.
Just a couple of them. Let me show. Well, so
okay, so let's now address the first of these questions: the difference between the models that can be used for Europe. I mean, this is something that is not something that you're going to be able to look at with the Interactive Atlas itself. You do have the ability to, and I'll just pull up.
Yeah, share again, please.
So I'll just pull up a different view to give an idea of what we can do here.
Yeah, Richard, share again your screen. Sorry, because I took over.
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, I'm just getting it ready. Yeah, so. Okay, so what we're now looking at is we're looking at so this is the same variable we're looking at before, which is total precipitation, but instead now of looking at the change, this is under the quantity scenario tab. You can also look at the value of that, and one of the other functions of the Atlas is that you can bring up a duplicate map, and that will allow you to compare different data sets. So in this case, what we can actually do is, because we also have observational data sets in here, and so what we can also do is we can compare, for example, one of the observed data sets. So let's look at a European specific data set. And so this then allows you to compare between the what the models are saying over this region and what the observations are saying. So we can't do an individual model by model comparison, but what we can do with the Interactive Atlas is show that how well the models in general are reproducing the climate of the region. So this is a way of being able to get some handle on the ability of the models to reproduce the climate. If you wanted to get more detail in how you would go about potentially selecting subsets of models for particular applications, then I would refer you to chapter 10 of the main report, and there are details there. We don't, in terms of whether we can select a best model, there isn't really such a thing as a best model, and because as you run the models into the future, they all have different characteristics and often have sort of slightly different projections of change. If you're interested in looking into the future for looking at impacts or a risk assessment, then you really need to be factoring multiple models, and the idea of a best model doesn't actually really work in that context. Okay, so what was the next question, Jesus? And is it easier if you just read the question out rather than swapping the screens back, maybe?
Yeah, no problem. So the other question is if it's possible, for example, to select a cell of 7 by 7 square kilometers in one specific point.
I'm afraid that is not possible, no. So the reason for choosing these quite large subcontinental regions is because this is the scale at which we feel we can are able to draw confident conclusions from the models, or from a scale at which the models are producing robust information. That said, all of the maps that you are producing here, you can actually export all those maps, and those maps themselves, you could export them as GeoTIFF files, so you could import them into, say, like a GIS application, and obviously the underlying numbers for those maps are actually there in the GeoTIFF file. So clearly, as you can see, I mean, we're actually at a resolution of about 0.5 degree when we're looking at these figures here. So you can get there is information in here which is at higher resolution than the size of the reference regions, but we certainly, I mean, we would not advise interrogating the information at that scale, and certainly down to the scale of 7 kilometers. We wouldn't advise in general to interpret this information directly at that scale without additional context. So, any other questions, Jesus?
Yeah, there is another one. Can we refer to this information for researching certain regions and with proper attribution to the Working Group 1 Atlas?
Oh, absolutely, yes. The whole point of what we're doing here is to make this information as widely available as possible. So if you wanted to use maps, if you wanted, as I say, to export the underlying data set that you're visualizing here for some other application, then yes, we would very much encourage that. The only thing we would ask is that when doing that, if it is for a publication or some sort of scientific report, that you obviously acknowledge where this has come from, and also not only acknowledge where it's come from, but also make it very clear what are the data that you are showing. But yes, we would very much encourage people to do that.
And there is a last one. Are there two versions of regional information? A simple one for decision makers, media, and an advanced version for scientists? This was mentioned in the videos.
Okay, so let me just go back to, okay, well, I'll just go straight there. So this, and oops. So yes, we do have a simple version of the regional information here, and what we're looking at is we're looking at the same number of the variables, but we're just restricting the ability. We're taking out information about time periods, about emission scenarios, and we're just now focusing on either the values or the changes that you are seeing at different global warming levels. So here, so in terms of the quantity and scenario tab, then you just have 4 options of different warming levels. You still have the ability where it's relevant to the data to choose different seasons. You still have the ability to look across quite a wide range of variables. But in terms of looking into the future, you're just looking into a future which is represented by different warming levels. So that's the simple version of the regional information component.
Okay.
Okay, any more questions?
No more questions for the moment. So it's already 1:10.
Okay, well, in that case, it just leaves me to say thank you very much to everybody for attending this webinar. If you have any questions, as I said, if you go to the Interactive Atlas, you have the ability to email us from there directly. And we would be very, very interested in any feedback you have. So if you have time to take the survey, or if you just have one or two comments, if you think you spot an error, please let us know, because we would really like to fix it. So with that, I'll just say thank you again. Thank you to Jesus for helping out with making sure that I share my screen appropriately. And yeah, it's and I hope you all have a good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Bye-bye to all. Rebeca, ¿estás por ahí? ¿Puedes cortar?